welcome to part two. So now we're gonna take a look at the actual passes. Now that we learned the terminology and names for each grips and stuff, make it easier, okay? We'll go head on for this one. Right, so the first one, probably the most basic, fundamental kind of pass you learn at the beginning is the Toreada, okay? Usually we set it up with these C grips over here. Sometimes we put a little bit of pressure on one side, the other side we're focusing more on getting angle on our partner. Sometimes you just push both legs. You can get quite creative with it, okay? But the main drill is you kind of like, you get an angle on your partner to the side and you're trying to chuck those legs away and land up maybe in a knee on belly or something like this, okay? Knee on belly is probably the first one we learn, and it's kind of a common drill that people just go one and then they just go to the other side, etc. Then you start learning movement patterns and combinations, things like a cross step to fake and then into a knee on belly, okay? You can go both ways. You can just kind of feint one way and go to the other, right? But it becomes like a pattern of your own later on where you just kind of stick to a little combination footwork, all right? And that's essentially the Toreada, okay? It might come, most of the time when you do pull off a Toreada, it's quite hard for you to actually open this up and get into a knee on belly against kind of experienced athletes, all right? So instead, we usually end up the pass. Where we see it the most is in north-south situations, okay? Where we get around the corner, but my partner keeps that knee really close to the chest, maybe framing on us or whatever, right? And we can't really get through the base, so we reach around and we go into these C grips on the shin, all the way to around to north-south, and then we try to melt in and finish the pass from there. Even then, it's gonna be a little bit of a hard work because Tamara's still gonna kind of frame on us, right? She'll have her hands there. I'll go like this. She'll still frame on my hips or chest, and then we're kind of just grinding our way through to get that pressure to beat it, right? Again, speed kind of like has a big thing on it, okay? The more fatigued your partner is, the easiest to pull it off as well, right? And the last variation of the Toreada we see sometimes is like this kneeling variation, okay? Which is essentially we get around again, but the C grip manages to slide up a little bit above like the kneecap, so we can actually push the leg a little bit more, right? Before, if I'm just here, it's really hard to open that up. But if I go to this kind of C grip, I can sometimes push it over, and we can drop a shoulder in and a knee to just land shoulder to the abs and then finish it off with like a double underhook situation, right? And those are your three types of Toreadas that we see really often, right? Moving on, X pass, which is very similar to that position, but instead we really focus on this arm with an elbow frame that we learned early on, okay? It's best done also at an angle because it is quite difficult squared on to find that grip, right? We might start off over here, but then we get off to the side and we can see a little opening for it, okay? If you just get used to getting inside and getting your shoulder in, that's essentially what we need to start with. And then the other hand, I'm just getting a C grip like this, right? Often we can time it with our partner trying to trap our legs and we step out. Sometimes they're just staying really close to your chest, so we just push it through. But that's essentially the X pass. We make an X with our arms, we drop down again, shoulder to the abs. There'll be a little bit of shrimping of movement here, but if we can control the hips and walk our knees in, we should be able to stabilize the pass, all right? We're going to see that X pass a lot from other combinations, all right? It's a fundamental pass we're gonna use. You see a lot in knee slices, leg drags, combinations, pretty much any pass that I can think of. There is a variation with the X pass in mind, okay? Or at least the elbow frame in mind, right? And again, the next one is 2-on-1 control, which one more time, we're gonna see that again, okay? I come in, the 2-on-1, we're just focusing really on pinning one side of our partner's leg. So we take an inverted C grip, we push that leg down and we stay quite far from our partner. And again, if I see the opening to come in with that elbow frame, we're probably gonna try an X pass really quickly. And again, walking our knees in and stabilizing the position. Or we get into that 2-on-1 control once more, but this time we can't get to the inside, okay? Maybe Tamara already framed me on my shoulder and I won't be able to get there, so your next kind of thing is north-south, right? So you can see a pattern. Anytime we can't get a pass from here, we try to go to north-south, controlling those shins and closing in the space, right? The only other thing you can do other than that is trying to go in between the legs instead, right? So for this, I get around here, but I preempt Tamara coming in with that leg, so I might use maybe what we call like an elbow frame. It's pretty much the same elbow frame we use here, but to the inside of the thigh where I'm flaring over here, or a scoop grip, which is really commonly taught as well, which is this, to slide through and go around the legs instead, right? Again, it keeps that dynamic kind of action going on where you're moving side to side, so it's another great way to kind of experiment with the combinations, right? So you often see something like an attempt at a 2-on-1 into the X pass, but Tamara frames and pummels her leg in. I might go to north-south where I can't really get past the north-south, so then I switch over and I try to go to a scoop grip to get around instead, right? Again, that's one example that can go in many different forms to get around, right? Moving on, we have leg drags. Okay, leg drags are another popular way to get something going on as well. Okay, for this, I like to set up mostly with like toe grips. So I'm gonna use this to chuck Tamara's legs to the side, right? Although we can use our pummeling drill, which is I pummel the leg, use my C grip to push that off. And the leg drag is essentially the leg coming across my hip. Anytime that goes there, we consider it a leg drag, okay? Although to finish the actual leg drag, okay, it's quite difficult. We have to be able to maintain control of this bottom leg, keep this onto that side of our hip, and walk until we're able to collapse and swallow the knee and finish off in this like L-shaped scenario, right? Which again requires a fatigued opponent or really good timing and pressure work, okay? So normally when we get around to here, Tamara will be shrimping towards us, throwing those legs over, and you have to beat all of that. That's the hard part, right? So for doing a leg drag, it has to be a boom, I go here, she's shrimping, I'm moving, and eventually we come into this leg drag scenario. And you can see it becomes like from a loose pass to kind of a pressure situation instead, right? Which is one strategy. Now, if I'm looking at it in a more kind of dynamic movement scenario, I can start with a leg drag, and we can go into what we call a half drag trap instead, where when I feel her shrimping, I know she's gonna shrimp, and I'm just gonna close in the space and go into a really low squat stance, okay, where again, we see that pattern, that elbow frame is gonna come in to prevent the high leg from coming over. If we can prevent the high leg over, we go into our X pass and we pass. If we can't prevent that grip, then we're gonna move on to north-south, okay, and then try to finish it off, right? The only other thing I'm gonna add to those leg drag drills is the scoop grip, okay, which is another passing scenario as well, which is up until now, we kind of use these elbow frames most of the time, and these C grips for north-south. Another option is trying to get to the scoop grip, which is this here, okay? Where I control the knee and I put a little bit of torsion on the side of Tamara's knee. And that's essentially to make it harder for her to throw that leg over the top, okay? Now, most of the time, if it's just here, she can throw it pretty easily just by going over the top. But if I start going here and putting a little bit of pressure, I can use this arm to push and maybe use my chest to finish it off. So it takes a little while, this one, okay, to get used to it, but it's a fantastic variation as well. You can still go to north-south with it as well and then move it around to try to go like to this kind of situation where we extend the leg. So I'll still use it and add it to the chain, right? So that's most of our passes from there. The next set of passes, we call them high steps, okay? Which is essentially we're trying to go through the legs. So up until now, we've just been going around it, right? But in this situation, we're going to go through this little scenario here. We need to create angles, so I need Tamara to be on her side. When she reaches in for my leg, I might be able to do a quick high step over the top. Okay, even if she doesn't reach as well, sometimes you're here and you're moving and you can just, boom, hop over the top. Again, probably north-south is going to be your best choice. People tend to like attacking this leg, going underneath it and over, so just be careful with it a little bit, right? So that's our high step. We can use shin traps as well, so where we go around, we block the shin, and then we go to a high step, so you can get quite creative with it. With the footwork, you could be doing toreadas, I trap. I might be doing the back step instead, which is here, okay? The back step works very similar, all right? The only thing is I trap it with this one, and I go high step and back step from there, all right? And that pretty much concludes our passes for the loose style passing, okay? I haven't added the popular passes like the knee slice because it is kind of like a pressure situation, but it could also be thrown in there, okay? Especially when we're doing the high elbow frame. So throw it in there whenever you can as well, right?